Hey guys, welcome to Rough Riders. Thanks for stopping by. Today we are talking about phones and tablets. These are so ingrained in our lives we take them everywhere. And why not? They're a powerful communications tool. They connect us to the internet and give us all sorts of access to information. With their built-in GPS and mapping capabilities, they're great for navigating around town or across the country. But once you get out into the woods, out into the middle of the desert, whether you're hiking or backpacking or going off-road, these devices start to become limited in what they can do. Now, you could go buy an expensive dedicated GPS unit, a Lawrence or Magellan or Garmin or something like that, but I'm going to show you how to turn your Android phone or tablet into a powerful offline GPS solution that will help you find your way around, help you find your way back to your base camp, help you set waypoints and map the trails. So let's take a look at some of these solutions. I'll show you what I'm doing and how it works. So after trying somewhere between half a dozen and a dozen offline GPS mapping solutions, the one I actually chose to go with was Backcountry Navigator. First, the reason why is I wanted something that was very feature rich, which this application is, and I also didn't want to get stuck with an annual subscription fee. I mean, that starts to add up after a few years. And so, you know, that really wasn't interesting for me, and when I got done trying a number of these out, I really found that I liked the Backcountry Navigator the best. So let's take a quick tour of Backcountry Navigator and show you some of the key features and functionality. So on the left hand side, you've got your hamburger menu. This allows you to switch between the map screen, the compass screen, and the stat screen, as well as go into the settings where you can customize and optimize the application to suit your needs. Along the top, you've got a search button that allows you to search for a specific set of coordinates or a specific location. So for example, if I wanted to search for Walker Valley ORV, and then hit go, it'll center over Walker Valley. And so we'll see that it just did that right there. And as I zoom in, you can see there's some of the trails and everything. So it takes me right to that location. If I want to go to the location button, I can center on my current location. I can record a track. That allows me to record trip data and map trails. So if I'm hiking and I want to map where I've been and find my way back, I can do that. I've got next to that, I've got the map layers button, and now this allows me to switch between different map sources. So currently I'm using the Thunder Forest map source. If I wanted to go to the Cal Topo map source, you know, with the click of a button I can do that. If I, you know, and these are all ones that I've switched back and forth from recently. But if I wanted to go to, you know, a different map source that I haven't used, I can open that up. I can select the USA. Now I've got a choice between imagery maps, topo maps, all of that kind of stuff. Now these are all online map sources, so I need access to data in order to be able to utilize that. That doesn't do me any good if I'm out in the wilderness where I don't have access to data. But what they allow you to do within the application, I'm going to switch back to the Thunder Forest here for a second, is I can download sections of any of these maps, these online maps, for offline use. So for example, let's say I'm going to Walker Valley and I'm going to go hiking or backpacking or whatever the case may be, and this particular place I'm going to go riding, and I want to download that section of map. What I can do is I can go to my map layers, and then I've got right here select areas for download. So I can select the Walker Valley area like that. If I want to add more to it, I can hit the scroll button and I can come up here and then switch back and I can add to it. And then when I'm ready, I just hit the download button, and now it's going to give me an option to say, do you want to cache this map tile? Do you want to save it to a folder? Do you want to save it to an existing folder that I've already created? So, let's say in this particular case I wanted just to create a folder for the Walker Valley area. I can hit a button, give it a name, and hit create. And so I'm going to save it. Apparently I've already saved that folder, so I'm going to hit begin download. And it tells me, it does an estimate of the size and all that kind of stuff. I can hit proceed, and then it'll start downloading that section of the map, and then I can continue in the background and continue doing stuff. So that's really cool to be able to do all of that sort of thing and save all of those map tiles or those map sections for use when I'm out without a data plan. So really cool kind of stuff. Now that's what you've got going on with this map tiles button, is being able to switch between topographical maps and imagery maps and things like that. So I can go into US topo imagery, and now I've just switched over to an image map. So that's really cool to be able to do all that. And now I can do the same thing. I can select an area for download and download the imagery that goes with the topo maps as well, and have access to that as I'm offline. Next to the map layers button, then I've got trip data. Now this is where you store all of your GPS tracks. So if you're recording a trail hike, a waypoint, where you parked, whatever the case may be, you're storing that in a trip database. So the trip data is stored separately from the map data. And the reason why that is because you don't want your trip data tied to a specific map. So keeping that in a separate database allows me to overlay that trip data on top of any map source that I'm using. You can create different folders for different trip data. So if you're hiking one specific area, you can save the trip data to that specific area. So for example, if I'm in Walker Valley, I can save the recording for Walker Valley in a separate Walker Valley trip data. If I go to Darrington, I can save that as a separate trip data. And so I don't have all of these trip points just stuck in one giant database file. That just allows you to kind of organize the data a little bit easier. The other cool thing that you can do with the trip data is you can go find trails. So for example, I'm centered on this location. If I want to find, you go search for trip data from gypsies, I can select my area, how far out I want to go. So let's say 50 miles, and I can do a search. And there's Walker Valley, there's Mount Vernon to Vancouver. Some of these may be relevant, some of these may not. And so you can go and look at any individual one. As long as you've got access to data, you can go out and look for that and see what is the trip data associated with that. So here's the trip data. So there's lots of trails, and now I can actually import that, or whatever the case may be that I want to do here. If I want to add that to my Backcountry Navigator application. So lots of really cool stuff. Next, let me show you how to import some of that GPX files in that trip data. So if I want to import a GPX file or trip data, I can do that through this trip data button. I can go in here and I can select import tracks or waypoints. But before I do that, I've got to get the GPX file onto my tablet. So what I've done on the tablet is I've created a folder and I've called it Maps. And this is where I can store, or I can put trip data to import into the application. So to show you that process, let me come up here to my PC. And so what I have here is I've got some GPX data. So a friend of mine has done an absolutely ton of exploring across Washington State. He was kind enough to send me a couple of GPX files so I can show you how to import those files into Backcountry Navigator. And by the way, if you're looking for a place to go ride in your UTV, I highly encourage you to go pick up, he's got a book out called Scoundrel's Guide to UTV Riding in Washington State. It's full of just tons and tons and tons of places to ride. He gives you lots of information about the location, how to get there, where to park. He even provides you some of these GPX files, with all the trail maps. So he's provided me a trail map, for example, for Walker Valley. And so, what I've done is I've created a folder on my PC and called it GPX files, and I've just stored those GPX files that he sent me there. On my PC, as I said, I showed you I created that maps folder. Here's my Galaxy tab, and I've navigated over to the maps folder. So if I want to add Walker Valley, I can just come over here and drag it in. And so the drive takes a second to spin up, but it'll copy that GPX file over to my tablet, just like that. And so now if I come back down to my tablet, I've got to refresh the tablet. So let me go back out and come back in. Go to my maps folders, and there's my GPX file that I just added. I can select that, and let's create a new one, and we're going to call that Walker Valley. And then we're going to save that. And we're going to start the import. And so now it'll import that GPX data into the application, and it'll overlay that trip data. So now let me switch over to that Walker Valley, and there it is. So now all of that trip data that he captured is now stored, and so now I have all of that data right there at my fingertips when I'm out exploring the trails. Okay, so now I've imported my GPX tracks, I've downloaded my maps, I've got 2 maps saved for Walker Valley, for example. So right now I'm using the Walker Valley map folder, and I'm using the Thunder Forest map as the source. But if I wanted to switch over to an imagery map, I could select that, and I'm now looking at the imagery map for that area. So all of this is now offline, so I'm not relying on any online mapping sources. So even if I don't have online access to material, I've still got all my map data with me. I've got my topo map, I've got my imagery map, and I've got my GPX files for the trails. Okay, so once again, I'm going to import some more GPX files. So as I said, I went riding at Darrington, and so I want to import that trip data. So I've already added the trip data to my map folder. So now I'm going to import that, and I'm going to put that into a new trip database. We're going to call it Darrington. And we're going to start the import. And then I'm going to change my trip database over to the Darrington one. Now there's my trip data imported. And you can see I've got my parking waypoints on there. I've got, I've added some waypoints on where trails end. They just sort of dead end. All of that kind of stuff. Now you'll see there's a section of trail right here that I didn't go explore the other day when I was riding. Now I've been on that trail dozens of times, so I know it's there. I just didn't get to it that day when I was recording the map. But what Backcountry Navigator is going to allow me to do is to be able to add that section to my trip data. And so to do that, I can select my area, and I'm going to pop up the waypoint marker, but instead of marking that, I'm going to use a feature called Measure and Draw. And so what that's going to allow me to do is to be able to tap the screen, and add those points to create a route. And so now I can just hit the create a route button, and it's using the points that I just added to create that, and it's also giving me markers to tell me how far that distance is. And so now you can see that trail has now been added. Now it's in red to show that it was one that was manually added as opposed to one that was recorded by the Backcountry Navigator application. And so now that trail has been added to my trail map GPX. Another thing that you can do with Backcountry Navigator is you can add waypoints. So if you saw my video, you know that I went riding in Liberty, Washington. Fantastic place to go off-roading, by the way. And so what I've done here is I've centered the map on Liberty. And so as I zoom in, I can add a waypoint because I know where, for example, where you can park and camp and all that kind of stuff, and it's right here off this little bend in the road there. And so it's right alongside there's a parking lot right there. And so if I want to add a waypoint, for example, I can go to this pin drop. I'm going to mark that location, and I'm going to change the thing to show parking for the little icon, and then I'm going to give it a name, and we're just going to call it Liberty Parking. And then I can save that, and so now it's marked that spot. So now as I go off and explore the trails, I can know exactly where I parked because I can mark that as a waypoint and find my way back. Now Liberty is a U.S. forest, and so what's really cool is right now I'm using the Thunder Forest, but if I switch to the map source over to U.S. Forest Service, they've got all the trails already marked for me. So in this particular case, I wouldn't necessarily need to map out a GPX file or import a GPX file because all the trails are already marked. But I can also record my exploration as I'm going out and exploring the trails by just starting a recording. I'll show you that in just a minute about how the recording a track works as well. But it's nice to be able to do that because now you've got all of those sorts of resources at your fingertips. To show you the trail mapping or track recording functionality of the app, I'm here on a trail that winds its way in and around the Microsoft campus. It's a beautiful little walk, actually, about 5 miles. We're not going to do the whole thing. This is just to give you a sense of how the track record functionality works. So I've actually already started recording the track, as you can see right there. But to do that, you just hit that location button and start recording, and it will record the path you take. So we'll see it update here. I don't know if it's going to stay in focus because I'm bouncing around here, but you can see the trail takes a little bend here. And it's recording the track. So when I'm done, I can stop the recording, I can pause it, all of that kind of stuff. So that's how the trail mapping works. If I wanted to output this as a GPX file, I've already done that once, but I've just added the trail. So what I can do with Backcountry Navigator is I can go share data from this, and it's going to say, give it a name, and so we'll just call this Darrington 2, and then I hit the export button. I can actually choose whether I want it as a GPX file or a KML, but let's just leave it as a GPX, and then I can hit export. And so really quickly it just creates a GPX file for me, And now that is ready for me on my PC or on my tablet to go grab that as a GPX file. So if I go up here to my tablet, BC Nav, here's this output folder right here. And there's Darrington 1 and there's Darrington 2 as a GPX file. This is the one we just created with the new trail. And so now I can grab that, I can drag it over to my GPX folder and copy that over. And so now I can share that with others. I can upload that to the Gypsy site, for example, so that others can find it, you know, within the Backcountry Navigator application. So the last piece I wanted to show you then is there are some additional purchases that you can make within the application. So there are additional maps that you can buy. There's BLM boundary marker maps. There's 4x4 trail maps, you know, by different states and things like that. Snowmobile trail maps. So there's a variety of different maps and trail markings available for you for purchase, depending on the type of activity that you're doing, whether you're hiking, backpacking, hunting, and you might need some of those things. They are there. So for me, I'm not going to really buy any of these sorts of things because I'd rather just download my maps and create my own trails. But depending on the type of activity you like to do, you may be interested in some of these. So they are there in case you want them. Okay, so I think we've covered just about most of the key features. We've covered how to search for places. We've covered how to record a track, turning on and off the GPS so that if you want to save power, that's kind of there and pretty straightforward. We've covered how to create trails and tracks. We've covered how to switch between different map sources, whether you're using online or downloaded maps, sections that you've saved. We've covered we've covered changing trip databases. We've sharing your GPX files or exporting your GPX files. Here's what we didn't cover. So going in, you can with your waypoints that you've marked, you can rename them and assign different icons. You can go in and actually name your individual tracks and stuff as well. So if you're on a trail and that trail has a name, you can actually assign instead of just giving this random number that's generated by BCN, you can actually rename that trail name. So you can give it and say, we'll just call this test 1, and then save that. And so now that trail becomes test 1, and then as you go and look at the trail. Let's see, that should have renamed it here. I don't know which one that was. There it is. So you can see test 1 right there and renamed that whole trail. So you can do those kinds of things as well. So there you go. There's a quick tour and walkthrough of the Backcountry Navigator and how to use this as a offline GPS mapping solution. Okay, so whether you're a hiker, a mountain biker, you like to go backpacking or hunting or off-roading, having an offline GPS solution is one of the most important pieces of gear that you can have in your bag. So highly encourage you to have a solution, whether you're buying a Garmin or a Lawrence or something like that, or utilizing your phone or your tablet. This is just what I'm doing when we take our side-by-side out and when we go hiking, when we go camping. So highly encourage you guys to have a solution of some sort. It can save your life. If you got any questions, again, please post those below. I'll get to those just as quickly as I can. If you have a GPS solution that you really like, please share that. If you've got an iOS device, obviously I didn't cover any of that. Please share that as well. I'm sure other viewers would love to see what you're doing. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It helps me to know what kind of content to bring to you guys, as well as it helps the video perform better on YouTube. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the trails.